Sinclair Mills, but very which.
I grew up with Brad.
That's not.
Everybody there?
Yeah, so there's gonna be access.
All right, everybody. I think, hopefully we don't have, maybe I need to turn my.
Said you need to, you need to move
Yeah.
your, the sound check. Where's the mute?
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's, the room is not, we have an online attendance and the room is not mic. So this is kind of our mic for tonight. So we're going to do the best that we can. I just wanted to, before we get the official presentation underway, I just wanted to welcome everybody out to the meeting. Thank you for coming all the way to the Pat White Center. We know this is far for some of you to travel. And obviously the snow has kind of hindered things. But this being a park facility, we weren't able to get Colgan or any of the school, well, obviously schools are closed, but we weren't able to get any of the school facilities for tonight. So again, welcome to the Pat White Center and coming out this way for the community meeting. We also wanted, this is the broader public community meeting, so we wanted to make it accessible to the general public. To talk about the meeting, I covered the logistics about the bathrooms. We have staff tonight. I'll just quickly introduce staff. We have Erica Muchler-Nielsen, our landscape architect. In the back, we have Robert Boyd, principal planner. Sitting next to him, Seth Hendler-Voss, director of Parks and Recreation. Janet Bartnick, deputy director of Parks and Recreation. Myself, I'm the planning manager with Parks and Recreation. And we have our consultants. Ed Ledger.
Good evening, I'm Ed Umbrell from Dewberry Engineering. We're an architectural engineering firm and I'm kind of the overall project manager for the project.
Brian Lilly with Dewberry as well, landscape architect, working on the project.
I'm Zachary Taylor at Dewberry as well. I'm a landscape architect working on this project.
And Kevin Sitzman with Grove Slade, transportation consultant, working with the Dewberry.
And online, we have Supervisor Vega is in attendance online. So for those who are online, we apologize for any volume or sound difficulties we're having. And we ask that you go ahead and communicate any comments or questions that you have via the chat, and then we'll bring them to the attention of everybody in the room. So if you can please, so for the online attendees, please do that. Any other? Oh, we also have Sebastian from Inside Nova is here this evening. He'll be taking photos. If you do not want your image in a photo, please let him know afterward. I'm one of them. I hate my photo, but that's just me. So anyway, let's see. Other logistics? I think we're good to go. So everybody, welcome again for the presentation. This is for the 10% design kickoff, which will explain further the stage that we're at for this, for the Doves Landing and Sinclair Mill properties. So welcome.
Okay, thanks, Patty. All right, so just full disclosure, we had, as Patty alluded to, there was a previous meeting back in November. I recognize a lot of the faces from that meeting have come here tonight. The presentation we're going to show tonight is similar to the one we showed in November. We made some updates and some tweaks and things like that. But we haven't made a lot of major changes to the layout of the design. We've made a lot of good notes, and we'll be making those changes, some changes as we move forward on the design process. But I just want to, some of you may say, well, that's the same thing we showed last November, but that's true, okay? But we have made some tweaks and improvements. So here's a reiteration of the players. Patty introduced the county staff. I said we're from Dewberry and Associates, and then of course Kevin's with Grove Slade, our traffic consultant. Okay, so here's our itinerary for tonight. Since I'm an engineer, I like to be organized, things like that. So we're gonna go through the phases of the project and the current schedule. We'll talk about the 2022 master plan briefly. Kevin will talk about some of the traffic analysis and the counts and things along that lines.
Stand in front of his head.
All right, maybe I'll go over here then. We'll have some comments and have time for comments and questions. And then we'll have, provide some feedback and some website so you can provide additional comments or thoughts to the county. Okay, before I get too far into this slide, I wanted kind of to talk briefly about how the design process works in Prince William County. So if the Parks Department decide they want to do a project, such a park improvement project or something like that, like similar to this project, they go through a very regimented design phase. The first steps are to design in this case, they've hired Dewberry to prepare the design plans for the proposed park improvements. So we usually go through 3 stages of the design, the 35%, maybe the 65%, and then the final design. During those 3 iterations, we solicit comments from the staff and the citizens, and we constantly make improvements and updates. And then at the end of that 100% design phase, the project then goes out to bid. The county would select the contractor and then construct the park improvements. Dewberry's just been hired at this point to do up to the 35% design plan. So what you're seeing tonight is the 10% check set as part of leading up to that 35% design plan. So we're a long way away from final construction or even starting construction. Okay, so I wanted to make that clear. We kind of touched on that a little bit. I think there was some confusion in the room in November. Okay, so here's kind of a little bit of
Sorry, I'm just gonna chime in. And then just a reminder for those of you that were at the November meeting and for those of you who are new tonight. So what happens after the 35% design of all of the facilities that were proposed in the master plan, then we'll look at doing some cost estimating and phasing with the Sinclair Mill property phase first per the board's direction. So that's how, to clarify, I don't know if that was clear in the November meeting, but that is how the phasing is directed by the board right now, is that Sinclair Mill will be developed first.
right, because the overall park is pretty big, and there's a lot of improvements and enhancements, so they're not going to all be done at one time. They'll be done in stages.
What's your timeline for where you're gonna get the 35%?
Okay, the 35% design should hopefully be done by this summer, maybe late spring, early summer. Okay, and then Patty, we'll talk about that as we get toward the end of the 35% design. We'll come up with some construction cost estimates and some permitting and things like that. Then we'll give that all the information to the county and the Parks Department. They'll kind of make a decision on which direction we're going to go. And as Patty indicated, the board has directed the Parks Department to focus on the Sinclair Mill portion of the site first. Actually, want to go back for a second? Yeah. So this is, basically Dewberry was brought on board back in June, July of 2024, and we've got started. We did some upfront work. We did some traffic counts. We did some cultural resources report. Kevin got started on the traffic study, did an overall park survey. And that took us up through basically September. Then we started the design back in September. And we followed the 2022 master plan, which you can see on most of your tables here. We kind of use that as our basis for our 10% design. Okay, and we'll review that. We'll refer back to that a couple of times. Okay, now we're going through. We had the meeting in November. We're having another meeting tonight to kind of solicit input from the community on the design. We made a lot of notes last time, and we're gonna. You can say something, Patty?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, we'll save most of your comment or questions, and comments are free anytime. Questions we'll address more at the end. With the plan set, we also put some sticky notes and a pen on your table. So if there's comments that you may not want to bring up, or you want to just put on a sticky note and attach to the plan set at the table, we'll be going through those after the meeting as well. So feel free to write down any questions or comments that you have on those sticky notes.
This is being recorded too, right?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Oh, there we go. Thank you. Yes, and the meeting is also being recorded, which will be posted on a webpage that we've set up specifically for this project, and that information will be at the end of the meeting.
Yeah, there'll be a slide with the path to the end. Okay, all right, as I mentioned, and Patty, keep jumping in if I miss something. So we're going through at the 10% design phase. We've got a lot of good notes from last meeting. We have another meeting tonight. then we're gonna go back and incorporate a lot of those, suggestions. Then we'll do a little bit more design, and then we'll have basically produce a 35% design plan set. Then we'll have another meeting, I think we're scheduled around mid-April to have another meeting for the community to come out and take a look at the plan at the 35% design. As I mentioned, we'll then do some construction cost estimates, kind of solicit some permits and things like that, and then we turn that over to the Parks Department, and they'll kind of make a decision on where they're gonna go and what they're gonna do next. So for instance, we decide we're gonna move forward on the Sinclair Mill side, then Dewberry or another engineering firm may be hired to take those plans to maybe the 100%. And then we would then submit, just like every other project, it goes through a formal submission and review process by the county. They'll issue comments, we'll make updates. The project will then be technically approved, might go out to bid, get a contractor on board, and that usually takes probably about another year or so, just as a guesstimate of the time. We're still pretty far away from doing any type of actual construction on the parks properties. Okay, here's like a little timeline. So we're obviously January, first quarter of 2025. After this meeting, we're gonna, work with the county to see what changes we're gonna make to the plan set. Then we'll move forward with the 35%, and then we'll have another meeting in April to review those improvements, get the cost estimates together. We'll actually solicit more public feedback in April, update the plans, and kind of get some cost estimates, some other things together. Okay, just want to reiterate that the goal of this project is to maintain, obviously there's going to be some improvements on the park, but to maintain the facility. It's a over 300-acre site, not counting the Sinclair Mill site. It's the largest natural and cultural resources facility in Prince William County. That's a correct statement?
Yeah, so when combined, well, I think actually Dove's Landing alone classifies as that, and then obviously when combined with Sinclair Mill and the trail at Long Branch, the entire land holding in that area will be about 500 acres. And I forgot to mention at the beginning that if anybody has seen the recent article that just went out, we just finalized the conservation easement on the Dove's Landing proper portion of the park. And then we're waiting, and it's in process, and we're close to finalizing the conservation easement on the Sinclair Mill property, and then that will formally be dedicated to the county by the developer of Sinclair Mill and Long Branch. So that's all in play right now as well, and that's why we're moving forward with the plan.
Yeah, that conservation easement really restricts what can be done on the properties. The idea is to maintain as much of the natural vegetation as possible. There's a lot of existing trails out there that are in good shape, they're going to remain as is. We may do some minor improvements where the trail crosses like small creeks and things like that, where there's some flooding in muddy areas, but a lot of the existing trail system is going to remain as is. Okay, so here's some of the overall goals of the park. Obviously, it's a natural park. We want to maintain that. We want to do some, I said, maintain the existing trails, make some minor improvements, add a couple of new trails in the southeast corner. We also want to provide 2 new ADA trails, one kind of on the western portion of the park, one on the eastern portion of the park, to make the park a little more accessible to people with disabilities and some other access issues. Okay. And then, of course, the park is currently used by hikers, cyclists, and equestrian. We want to maintain a lot of that on the existing gravel trails. Okay. Okay, so here's, these are the 2 layouts that are on the 4 of the tables, and I apologize, I only brought 4. I didn't know there was going to be 5 tables. So this is some shots from the 2022 master plan. The copy of the full master plans on the Prince William County website for the park. You guys can access that and look at that if you wish. So this was the layout that the 2022 master plan laid out. There's basically 2 parcels. The western parcel is the Dove's Landing parcel. I think it's 308 acres in size, so it's a pretty good sized parcel. Whereas across the way is Sinclair Mill, and that's only 27 acres here in this context here on the eastern side of the aquifer. So the 2022 master plan laid out a lot of the elements that they want to see incorporated into the park. It's already mentioned that ADA trails. We're going to add some fishing platforms, maybe a couple of small kayak launches for non-motorized boating equipment, just small handheld kayaks. We're going to add some shelters and some small picnic areas, And then one of the big items that everybody's talking about is the pedestrian bridge, which would theoretically connect the Dove's Landing to the Sinclair Mill side. So that's kind of, I think, the last thing on the county's checklist, because it's going to be an expensive item, and that would be theoretically like one of the last things that get done. So
When do you propose to do that bridge? What,
it would, we don't have a timeline for that since it's so far down.
like 5, 10 years or something?
Not.
Huh?
Beyond that.
Beyond that,
Didn't want to say anything on Twitter about it. Okay. All right, so that kind of brings us up to where we are today. That was a good summation of things. And now I'm going to turn it over to Kevin Sitzman from Grove Slate, who's going to talk about the traffic. And I think the slides he's going to show tonight kind of enhance what we talked about back in November, make things a little more clear. We got a little bit more information. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Kevin.
I'm gonna,
Yeah. Take your chair.
I'm gonna stand this way so that I can sort of point towards the microphone as well as being able to point. Okay, so in order to try and figure out how many vehicle trips would be coming to and from the park with the new facilities, the new programming, we went and looked at some other parks as part of our profession. Transportation engineers have a very large book that we look at for lots of different land uses like office buildings and homes and things like that. It's pretty sparse when it comes to parks. So they have a big county park category that doesn't really have much detail on it. So we thought the best way to determine the number of trips that would be coming to and from the park was to go look at other facilities that have similar types of programming to them. So we looked at Occoquan Bay, which has some picnic shelters and quite a few miles of trail. And we also looked at Crow's Nest, which has kayak launch and trails. So those are the major things that are going to attract people that aren't already attracting people to the park. So we came up with trip generation rates. We looked at how many miles of trail are proposed currently with master plan, along with as I said, the picnicking and the kayak launches. So what we determined is summarized here on the right, and we split it up from the two sides, because obviously when you drive there, you're going to drive either to the Sinclair Mill side, or you're going to drive to the Dove's Landing side, and there won't be a vehicle bridge to get across to go in between those. So, and then I have a series of slides after this that look at the numbers on each of the individual roadways. But we looked at it for 2 different time periods. So when is the park going to be more popular? That'll be likely on the weekends. And so we looked at the weekend midday peak. So 1 hour during the middle of the day on a weekend day. And then typically most roadways are busiest in the evening on a weekday, right? Lots of commuter traffic, lots of shopping activity, lots of moving about. Doesn't actually turn out to be the case for the roadways specifically surrounding the site. So we looked at both just to make sure we were finding the highest peak hour. So what do we see? We find that for the Dove's Landing side, the highest of those peaks is again the weekend midday. We expect about 50 additional peak hour trips going, and about half of those in, half of those out. And then during the evening, not quite as many, about 30 trips. On the Sinclair Mill side, only about 6 trips during any 1 hour out of the day. So let's go ahead and go here. So what else did we do? We took traffic count at various locations on the roadways accessing the two sides of the park. Again, during weekend midday and during weekend evening. And then we looked at other things that will add traffic to those roads, right? There's some since we took the counts, some of the Dove's Farm homes have been completed. As those finish up being occupied, those will add a few more trips. And then what happens with the park. So to start, we have the existing, this is the weekday evening peak hour. Unsurprisingly, Bradley Forest up by Brentsville Road has the most traffic of any of the segments we looked at. Less traffic down onto Dove's Lane and fairly low on Smithfield.
Didn't take Smithfield all the way out.
What's
They
that?
didn't do a traffic test on Smithfield all the way out.
We took a count here, took a count here, and here. So we put some of those
I'm
on.
not coming all the way out of Smithfield. Or Smithfield goes
So-
straight.
When we take a traffic count, it's like how many people cross this line here? So we counted here, but we did not count here.
Well, actually, Smithfield goes straight out next to the.
Oh, I'm
Smithfield.
sorry,
Yeah.
Smithfield, yes.
Yeah, that catches. traffic. Okay.
Okay, so, and the reason to count here was so we did get both ways. Okay. Okay, so that's the existing. On top of that, we added Dove's Farm. The existing trips include the existing residential uses. This is the future, that includes the future park trips as well. So obviously, these numbers go up, right? The 71 goes up to 96. So, right, and Sinclair Mill, pretty low to start, right down at the end, goes up a little bit. And then the other thing we looked at, go ahead. Because I know sometimes there's questions about daily traffic, right? How many trips a day over the course of 24 full hours are we talking about? Currently, again, the highest number in the system, Bradley Forest, just under 1,000 today, and then some various others that are lower. We go to the future, then the Bradley Forest goes up to about 1,200. And again, this includes those same components, the additional Dove's Farm trips and the park trips. Let's go to the next. The numbers are similar for the existing midday on a Saturday. These numbers are all very similar, but if we add the park trips, those are a little bit more, right? So we're a little over 100 up at the top of Bradley Forest. And then again, the other numbers go up similarly to the others. Let me go through the other two real quick and then take a question. The next one, yeah, great. And again, a little bit lower on the daily volume on the weekend days. And then if we go to the total future, again, we're right about the same number, just a little over 1,200 cars a day. And then I think this is the other area that was of some concern to people in November. Dove's, again, just east of Bradley Forest, and obviously it goes down the farther east you go, but 493 cars a day.
So you're saying that right there where it's 493,
Mhm.
there will be 493 cars driving past that spot every day.
Yes. That's daily. So over the course of 24 hours, 500 cars.
So 500 cars are going to drive in front of my house every day. That is what you are telling me.
If your house
That
is
is
the
my house.
first,
Your
the
thumb
first
is
one
right on it.
east of Bradley Forest.
Okay, so we're expecting 500.
And if we go back, so according to the counts, there's 236 every day that drive in front of your house today.
Can I want to say it's like, so it's actually half of that going one way than the other. A lot of people get it, part going back the other way.
No.
It's industry standard, so it's one day
These are
For-
max values?
for each. What's that?
Are these maximum values?
So what we did, and I should have explained that up front. So what you would expect, right, is that during the school year, that's when commute and everybody's everybody's activities are sort of typical. So industry standard again is for us to generally take traffic counts when schools are in session on a non-holiday weekday or weekend day. And that's what we did for the underlying counts that you see here. Because you would expect the park activities to be higher during the summer, the counts that we took at the other park facilities, we took those during the summer. So we are, I guess you can say, when you ask whether it's maximum or average, it's maximum because we are adding artificially the higher of the two times together such that you wouldn't see those summer trips at the same time as schools. But we said, let's combine them. Anyway.
You're trying to represent worst case scenario.
Yep.
That's a pretty bad scenario, 500 cars. Call that rough.
So, and again, it goes down as you go east, but that is the projection. Yeah.
I guess what kind of got
They'd go all the way from.
a little bit late, some of my neighbors got in, I saw there. My thinking is that as you develop the park, which you should do, the roads around the park, on Doves Lane in particular where I live, the roads are underdeveloped. And they're gravel, where in front of my house. And they're building some houses down the road. And so we're gonna have more traffic. I'd like to see as these things develop that, I don't know if they're ever gonna pave Doves Lane down there. But can control the speed of the cars that are traveling on that road.
So appreciate the feedback.
Yeah.
That's part of what we need to look at as we go through this, right? First step, again, similar with the 10% design, is understanding, what the current conditions are, how much additional traffic we're talking about, and what other concerns, right, all of you have that need to be looked at. What I think we've heard and what I imagine, if we sort of took a poll here tonight, there are concerns about the ability for the roadways to handle those vehicles. And then what do you do about it so that you don't make one or the other of the problems worse, right? So you talked about the roads being underdeveloped, right? Less capacity or less good carrying capabilities than you might want. But if you make it too good, nice, wide, straight, ribbon of pavement, then the speeds are going to go up even more. So there's got to be a balance there. And so, right, that's part of the reason to.
Yeah, there's
do
ways to
solicit
control
feedback.
that, that's true. I mean, if they get paved, cars will probably drive faster. But in any case, I'm gonna experience my neighbor across the road from me, we'll get dust like, in the summertime when it's dry on those gravel roads. I mean, people get in a hurry to go where they want to go. I lived kind of a peaceful life there, and this is all kind of changing now, so a little concerning.
Bottom line, though, there's no plan, no part of the plan involves improvements to the road. Is that correct?
As of this point, I don't think there's, specific plans for any of the facilities. But we're certainly looking at what needs to happen with the road.
Yeah, we've been talking to the Prince William County Department of Transportation about the current condition of the gravel road. They indicated that, the road varies in width from 18, maybe down to like 14 or 15 feet. It kind of varies somewhat. So they feel that it definitely needs some improvement. They don't feel it needs to be paved. That's the initial feedback we've gotten.
So the other thing, at the last meeting, you talked about how you had done a suitability analysis of the hardtop surface roads but indicated that that same analysis had not been done for the gravel. So is that incomplete?
So we looked at the narrower section, the lack of shoulders and such. And I think on one of the other slides, it talks about 6.5% of the capacity. If you look at the narrowest section of Dove's Lane, we're still, because it's lower, right? You know, compared to numbers like that. We're still well under the capacity of the road. But I'll say there's not in the toolbox that I, as a traffic engineer, had to draw from, there is not a well-developed capacity model for gravel roads. So, Eric, a quick.
Principally, Valley schools, capacity model. Schools.
Well, yeah, and again, everybody, so this, we're presenting the data that we have today as part of the 10% design. These are obviously questions that we're gonna take into consideration, and we're working, like, Kevin said, we're working with County Transportation and VDOT staff to look at what the design requirements would be based on the numbers that we project. So, that's ongoing as part of up to the 30, all the way up to the 100%, but it'll definitely weigh into the 35% design as well.
So, Erica, my question.
Patty.
Sorry, Patty.
It's okay.
Erica, I was gonna ask you a question. Sorry. My question was gonna be, how long do we want to talk about traffic before we get into the other pieces?
I mean, if there's,
I'm happy to take lots of questions.
yeah,
but
if
there's some other stuff.
if there's additional questions, we can address them now, that's
So,
fine.
okay.
I've not heard of the Dove's Farm development. We're on the overlays.
But,
Right,
oh,
by the number there.
and
Yeah,
yeah.
right there.
there's six single-family homes going in there. Or 1 acre lots, I believe.
Are there other parks in Prince William County that are gonna have a similar size parking area that you have to drive through 1.5 miles of residential subdivision to get to?
2 miles.
We have a number of parks throughout the county. There's a few that we have the number, we did the analysis. I don't have it off the top of my head. We can respond with that. But there's varying degrees of neighborhoods that you have to drive. Yes. So yes, the answer is yes. There's other parks. It depends on your classification of a neighborhood or comparison of the roadways, that type of thing.
Residential street with a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit and no sidewalks.
And kids playing and dogs and cats running around.
road.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Are there any parks like that?
No, I don't know if all of the full length has sidewalks to some of our others on the eastern end.
No sidewalk.
So,
They're no, we don't have any.
right, I know you don't, and I don't know if these others have sidewalks all the way. They have sidewalks on sections. But
Some. Because in our case, there's no sidewalk.
right, and
And
yes,
very narrow.
we
Your kids have to walk to the bus stop.
right,
Yeah,
and we understand that. and
That road.
Right, we understand that.
Section's really gonna grow. Correct.
And we understand that, and like I said, we're continuing to work with county transportation and VDOT to determine what the solution will be.
Well, is there any funding already allocated for this park?
There was 2.4 initially funded for the development of the park when it was Dove's Landing proper. We again added in Sinclair Mill, and the direction of the board was to deal with Sinclair Mill first. Part of that funding is going towards the design phase, so the 35% design and then the 100% design. So what will be left will go towards Sinclair Mill first. And then, so again, we'll need additional CIP money and additional funding to build this out. So we could potentially still be years away from building it out. To backtrack, for those of you that may not be familiar with the entire process. So how the park planning process works is that because we were being pushed, we wanted to, not only were, being asked, I should say, but we wanted to place Doves under a conservation easement in order to make sure that we were properly planning for the natural culture resource and interpretive benefits that site presents itself as a natural open space, mid-county. We knew we were going to want to put the conservation easement on it, so we did the master plan 2 years ago in order to make sure that we could accommodate any recreation interest that we wanted to develop on that property in the future after the conservation easement was put in place. So we went through the master plan process prior to the conservation easement so that that document could be incorporated into the conservation easement. So that's how now we're proceeding with designing those master plan elements. And then we will go and focus on developing them again after getting to 100% design and after having appropriate funding. So sometimes part of, I'm still building sections of the Broad Run Greenway that I started planning 20 years ago. So it is a long process. We don't know how funding will fall in the future, but that's where we are right now, is again at that very early stage.
So the conservation easement. Can I infer from what you just said that nothing more can be added to this plan based on the fact that you've now used this plan to get the conservation easement put in place?
Correct. That's.
So you could potentially take things off. Just can't add to it.
Correct.
Well, the Board of Supervisors could vote to do anything they wanted to. But
Well, they.
so that's not true.
Well, I mean, they could, but that's.
Zip line, of course, then if they want to.
No, but I think
It would require a lot. It would require a lot more than just the board. Because of the conservation easement, you would have to amend it. It's a recorded document that runs with the land.
So depending on the timing and how long this takes and where the second, the boat ramp on our side of where we live, not on the mill, but on this side, may not be built, and the boat ramp could be concentrated on, the kayak ramp could be concentrated on the Sinclair Mill side without it affecting the side where we all live. Is that what you're saying?
Right, and that's all dependent again on the phasing, when we get to the phasing and the vote. So that'll lay out how we proceed.
Right, but
with that.
right now, we're proposing a kayak launch on one on each side of it.
Right, on both sides, yeah, I got it, but what I'm saying is that there are some, you have your conservation easement, you have your plan, and some of these things are up for change at some point, depending on the circumstances, correct?
Can be, yes. We might be getting ahead of ourselves, so
Yeah.
if anybody has any other otherwise, we'll review the rest of the plan and then address any questions at the end of the meeting.
Is there anything that we can do to help with county transportation and VDOT and making sure that our voices are heard? Should we reach out to them? Or are you gonna?
Call right now, Richard and Don
Or something?
are listening in.
We can coordinate that for you. We have an email, specific email address set up for this project. We will convey all of those concerns to county transportation and VDOT when we have those meetings. So that would probably be the best and easiest way to funnel the information.
This is.
Yeah.
My eyes aren't so good, but looking at your map, isn't Dove's Lane, doesn't it just dead end? So all that traffic represents local resident?
Yes,
Sinclair Road.
yes. And I mean, and Sinclair Mill too, right?
Yeah, so both of those are dead ends. So any increase in traffic just represents the local residents using the facility.
So, I mean, let's talk about Dove specifically. So, there's the additional homes that are being built here currently. And then, again, this assumes the improvements on the park, so extra park visitors for that. So the increases, so the various traffic components, there are existing trips that drive down Dove's Lane today, residents. There's new residents that we took into account because we took the trip counts before those homes were occupied. And then the additional park trips. That's the components that are in the future volumes.
Well, the point of my question was because traffic on Dove Lane, trust me, I appreciate gravel road and, you know, that makes it worse, but, given limited sources within the county, I would think the Bradley Forest traffic issue might be a little more pressing to address, because that would immediate.
And I guess we should go over the specifics of the plan, but, right, there's the existing parking area here. And then there's proposed parking, another proposed entrance over here. So it's a split. So part of this 236 is additional park visitors going that way.
And the parking lot that's existing is 20 spaces and the one that's proposed is 60?
Those numbers sound about right. Yeah.
Generally.
Oh, not to, plus the 20.
Plus that's the little eastern part.
80 more parking spots.
It's 50 and 15.
We'll go over that. We'll go over that in a minute.
It's more than 20. It's 50.
I have to keep the dead horse. That 236 trips a day. Existing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Was your data taken when they were building those houses on Dove's farm
It was taken before then.
before then?
Yes. So then we took into account, again, I have
That was before they broke ground?
Back in June, I think it took.
it was early June. So I don't think that there was much construction activity on them yet.
Construction.
Yeah. I thought
Soon
they
probably
started. I was wondering if you got a bunch of the trades trucks in there as well on your
They-
data or not, I don't know.
They might be in there.
They may have counted my dog twice. Well, I just counted the households the homes beyond that, roughly 17 beyond that.
Yeah.
So that's 13.8 trips per household per day.
And the rule of thumb is 10 trips per single family home per day. So 17 would make 107.
Yeah, so if you go to the grocery store and come back, that's 2 trips.
Okay.
So that's like, these are usually, divide that by 2 for the actual coming and going. That traffic.
Well, I mean, the biggest hindrance for the residents here is the fact that that road cannot support that amount of traffic. It can't support a school bus. It's wide, people are, you know, it's just not, it is not the type of road that can bring people to a park. I mean, if you've got a 4-wheel drive, or you're driving, you know, an all-wheel drive vehicle, yeah, no, problem. But if you're in a little, you know, one of those little cars that's low clearance, you know, the road's in good condition, it's being maintained well, but there's gonna be a lot of traffic on that road. It really can't support it right now. At least that's my opinion, driving on it.
And I have to go whenever one of
Whoever
those.
got somebody passed.
Because it's
It's
just
someone
not-
that'll-
Yeah, it's I think yield roadway. Yeah.
I mean, and a tight road, okay, but yeah,
It seems like it makes sense to open it up to the whole county and the surrounding counties to come down that road for how many parking spots, how many acre park, the biggest park, right? In the county? No, I don't understand it. To me, it doesn't make sense.
Would be an air quality study?
I didn't hear this.
The question was there gonna be, will there be an air quality study performed for the increases in traffic? We had not thought about that, but we'll take that under advisement. I'm not sure what the requirements might be.
well, the dust gets kicked up.
Yeah, I think, yeah,
Pretty intense.
okay, that's a good point about the gravel road, all the dust being.
What's the reasoning in not leaving the entrance of the park where it's at and bringing it down to gravel?
Is that as a transition?
Yeah, okay, perfect transition. So, all right, so let's go ahead and we'll bear with me for a minute. Okay, so now we're gonna go into the 10% design or the preliminary plan for the park. Okay, so this would be, because we're moving forward, we did the 35% analysis for the entire park based on the 2022 master plan. As Patty and I both have indicated, this won't all be built, the next year. We're going to do it in phases. We're going to look at things as we move forward, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to go through, we're going to talk about 5 distinct areas. So the western side, with the existing parking lots over here. Okay, on the western side. There's a bunch of existing trails on the western side, proposing a little bit of improvements with a new ADA trail over there. Then we're going to move to the eastern side, which is kind of the east, and then the south. That's the new entrance coming in off Doves Lane at the end of Doves Lane. It'll come in, it'll access an upper parking lot with an ADA trail and some pavilions, some other things. And then that road will continue down along the existing power line easement to a much smaller, lower lot, which would access a kayak launch, a fishing platform, and then also kind of an ADA boardwalk type trail, similar to the one that's at the Occoquan Regional Park. Right. And then on the far side is Sinclair Mill. We'll talk about that. Once again, the dead end traffic, or the end of the line traffic coming down the Sinclair Mill Road into the park along the existing entrance down to the area along the river. And then the last thing we'll talk about is the existing trail in the southwest corner of the site. I think the Lake Jackson folks have something to talk
So
about.
there seems to be a lot more to offer down at the end of Dove's.
On the eastern end of the existing Dove's Lane? Yes,
There's a lot more to offer. Probably see more traffic.
that is correct, yes.
Yeah. Okay, that's the reason.
And that's Kevin's projections are based on the ultimate build out of the park based on what you're seeing today.
Eastern and southern portion is going to get used a lot more than the western. The one on Dove Lane. Correct.
Can I-
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
That's all I was getting at.
Well,
I was making-
one of the other reasons
No, go ahead.
was, right now, if a hiker's injured or something like that, there's not really any access to get into the park for emergency vehicles. So that's one of the impetuses for the access on the eastern side coming down along the overhead power line with the lower lot. Obviously, when access the park, access to the ADA trails, and some other things, but that's also one of the things we're thinking about.
I think we talked about this at the last meeting, but if you didn't build it, it wouldn't come, right? So if you have all that stuff.
That's true.
Park, we wouldn't have to worry about injured hikers on the east side.
Or the south.
It's kind of a catch-22.
Yeah.
If any other type of improvement, public improvement, you're gonna have that situation too.
So if you get a stranded kayaker, how are you gonna rescue him?
I don't know the answer to that question.
County's not gonna have any motorized boats.
What that kayaker rows 3 miles down to the
Um,
dam,
Yeah.
the only access is through Lake Jackson private property.
I mean, the stream's open today. You could have kayakers out there today.
Yeah, but they belong to the Lake Jackson community and the boat launches that come with it.
Fire department's got boxes.
I respect everybody's feedback, but for the sake of time, if we could get through the rest of the presentation and then do the question and comments at the end. And just as the spokesperson for the parks, I mean, obviously, I guess I have to apologize. But we are in the Parks Department and we're trying to make the site based on the feedback we received from the community and the needs and desires of the community. We've been trying to, develop a plan for the park that makes it a park that fits within our system and the natural resource category that we have many park types. And this is, again, is the natural resource part of it. So we're trying to not only expand the services to the county, but also try to be good stewards to the land and the environmental features and cultural resource features that are part of this park. So again, I'll let Ed finish up the discussion of the facilities and then we can answer further questions at the end.
Okay, and then one thing I wanted to point out, which we got feedback from last November, you can kind of see the light blue. One of the questions was, where's the floodplain? Because obviously there's some flooding issues along the river. So we've added the edge of the floodplain, which is in this light blue here. So it's basically along the river here, but then as you get up here, it kind of expands up into this area into here. You can kind of see the light blue, and then it gets a little bit. So that's one of the things, one of the changes we made on the plan based on some feedback we got in November. All right, so now Zach is going to start walking you through each of the 4, 5/5 areas, and I'll probably jump in and make some comments. Brian may jump in also, and Patty, and we'll just off we'll go. All right, Zach, you're up.
So as I said, we're going to start sort of talking about like the western part of the site, just to explain this plan real briefly. We have here, this like pink line here. You have, this is the edge of the Doves Lane, property. These dashed lines here, they're all existing trails. And so some of them have been modified slightly. And then when they're modified, they're this green for a natural mulch trail. This blue here is going to be, it indicates like an ADA trail. So basically anyone with mobility trails will be able to use this. Up here, we have Doves Lane, Smithfield Road, and Shawnee Lane. And so we're going to zoom in here on this parking lot up here, just to briefly talk about it. It is largely an enhancement of the existing parking lot with some additional trailhead features. So there will be improved signage for the new park. There will be a gathering pavilion so that people can get to the park and go under there in case there's a rainstorm, or on their exit, they can wait there if they're, trying to like wait out the storm. Additionally, there'll be benches, some interpretive signage. These parking lots will have stormwater management in them, little rain gardens. So those could be important for like emphasizing the natural resources of the park. And there will be enhanced handicapped parking and a restroom. The improvements, additional improvements to this parking lot are going to be 2 parking spots that are going to be used that can be used for school buses. Prince William County has a program to bring kids into the park. And so that will be important for them to be able to park here. Additionally, there is one dedicated equine parking area so that someone can, with a vehicle, bring a trailer with their horse, and they'll be able to bring their horse out within the parking lot safely and then be able to access the trails for the park.
So we.
Yes. Yeah, so this is basically, like, this parking lot is basically
The existing parking lot that's out there today.
Okay. So.
It's off Doves Lane.
Is it up?
this should be visible on the plans in front of you, are they?
We're not wasting it. Which one are we using? Are we using
Yeah.
2022 or 2024?
I'm sorry, I just gotta wrap.
Look at the white drawing on your tape. Master plan that we're kind of following as a template, whereas the white in the black drawing is what's Zach is showing up there on the overhead.
Okay, so it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. It's not.
Yeah, so it's color coded, you got the blue for the trail.
Yes.
So one thing here, just to remind everybody, we talked about earlier, the goals of the park was to have science in the park, provide ADA accessible trails. You have the ability to have the school buses park here. We've got a pavilion that they can get off the bus, do some learning under a pavilion, gather kids. And providing the blue trails are accessible, so that means they're nice and flat, they have a hard surface, they're ADA accessible trails. All the other trails you see are mulch trail or just natural surface trails, so more of a dirt path. And that's also why you'll see on the blue trails, they have to be very flat, so we have to honor the contours, existing contours of the park, preserve trees. That's why they move around a lot, because they're going with the existing contours. Further design will be done in the future to try to work around existing trees, rock features, other kinds of natural features. So these are just concepts, but that's kind of some background on why the blue trails look the way they do. Give you some concepts of the existing trails and the surfaces that they'll be in. And then we kind of want to tie back. We mentioned the goals up front, so just want to kind of tie what we did to the goals that were set out.
You guys have quite a bit of infrastructure in the floodplain, and I don't know how familiar you are with this lake when it floods. I have a dock, and every time the water comes up over it, I end up with about 1.5 inches silt on top of my dock that I gotta go shovel off. You've got what I presume is like a boardwalk that's ADA accessible down there in the floodplain. That bathrooms, parking lots. When this lake comes up once, twice, 3, 5 times a year, like it always does, what's the plan for keeping all that clean?
So if we do get trees and things like that walk up on the trails, they would have to be removed. The docks, things like that will be designed to float.
So that entire ADA path that's gonna be down there is gonna float?
That would be elevated. We are elevating it so that we're definitely above normal pool.
Yeah, but it's gonna be 7 feet up because I've seen the lake come up almost 10. There's the years ago.
No,
they build features all the time in parks that flood constantly.
Okay.
So we're aware of that. It won't be designed. We're gonna have a structural engineer to weigh in on the designs to make sure they're not gonna get damaged.
So as a homeowner, I'm not allowed to of the limitations of the RPA, and yet you guys are gonna come in and build all of this in the RPA?
Yeah, I haven't looked at the RPA, well, I'm familiar with the Chesapeake Bay regulations in the RPA. There's certain allowable uses you can do in the RPA. I
You
don't,
can't put in a boat launch, or a parking lot, or a bathroom.
right? Well, some of the feedback we got was,
But not for us.
Right,
Well-
yeah, that's, yeah.
one of the comments we heard last time was that lower parking lot is down in the floodplain. So we haven't made the change yet, but we definitely were considering moving it back up the hill somewhat to get it more out of the floodplain. We're gonna keep moving here, so.
Can we try to raise the questions as we discussed? We're getting a little ahead, so if we can raise the questions when we get to those areas. We're gonna go through each area and discuss those, and we have more information in the slides.
So continuing to talk about so the parking lot is meant to accommodate additional uses to better accommodate, equestrian users who can come here, or, the school buses to enhance, learning opportunities. There will be a slightly diverted natural trail to connect to the existing trails so that the equestrian users aren't having to be on any sort of ADA harder surface. So the equestrian users can continue using it. And then we'll have an ADA trail that is about a mile long. It can be divided into 2 loops. So based on, any users desire to have a slightly less than a half-mile loop, or to do a repeated slightly larger than a half-mile loop, users can kind of change their trail based on their preferred difficulty. There will be benches about every 1/5 of a mile so that users can have rest. And the changes you see in the trail is as Brian talked about, that sea trail, making sure it's following the contours of the site and having the proper grade to be an ADA trail, as well as optimizing the trail for pedestrian users so that other people aren't using the trail improperly.
Quick question. You said the parking lot is good for equestrians. Have you consulted any? Because when I look at that, that's horrible. Sometimes we have 4 horse trailers there at once. Now, it looks like we've taken away that ability to park them there. Kind of cars and things like that. It's just not good.
So the equestrian parking is actually right in this area
That way
here.
the horses and the ADA people could enter the same place.
Is it gonna be as much a nightmare as what you might have done to Long Park?
So we actually do have a very accomplished equestrian person on our staff that we consulted about this. So provided the spaces, but this area that you see, this rectangle that you see there is an area that they can pull the horses out of the trailer, tie them up to the trailer, get them saddled up. It's just kind of a specific space just for that. So we have done or given some thought to it, but you have additional thoughts or feedback.
Yes, so.
Yep, please,
Seeing the
please.
horses on the other side of the cars from where they're going, they can get good recipe.
Well, yeah, thank you for the feedback. It's gonna be probably a gravel parking lot. So, and obviously it's pretty tight. People won't be, hopefully won't be speeding through there.
Assistance.
That's the one.
All right, Zach, anything else you wanted to cover on the western side?
No, that was it. We got our ADA trail here, and then continued access to the existing trails that you see here.
Walking my dog. There's a Is there anything gonna be done with that? It looks like your new trail is gonna go.
Can you repeat the question for the online folks so they can hear?
Yeah, so there's a cultural item here in the middle of the ADA trail. Yeah, so we are aware of it, and we have optimized the trail so that the trail does not look at the chimney. And in general, we specifically avoid the chimney and its location so that it will remain ideally untouched by people. Yeah, and so moving on, we're going to go to the east side of the park with the eastern entrance, the east trail, and the first parking lot over there that accesses Dove's Lane. You can see here, this is the property edge for Dove's Landing Park. We have up here Dove's Lane. This here is the cul-de-sac, which we are intending for public use. We understand that there's difficulty. You've been kind enough to mention that the school buses are not currently going down there. So we are trying to get the school buses to agree to come down here and be in conversations. We don't have any, we're just talking with them right now. So this cul-de-sac is meant to be like a public use so that users going down here can then use this to turn around instead of going into a driveway. That is meant to help Dove's Lane. And there will be a vehicular here after the cul-de-sac so that users, the park can still be closed down, but the cul-de-sac will be available for use. The internal access.
Yeah, yeah.
Typically, parks are closed at
Dawn
Dawn-
dusk is our normal operating.
I'm assuming the park rangers who are already assigned to that area will be driving down Dove's Lane, doing that, maintaining or securing that park then. Okay.
Yes.
So we very much want the park to be secured with keeping the cul-de-sac accessible. And then going down the access road, you have here this parking lot here. Again, it will have this parking lot similar to the other one. Will have many of the same features. There will be restrooms. There will be interpretive signage for the park. There will be a gathering pavilion here. It will be smaller than the main western gathering pavilion. There will be some benches as well. And then at the end of it, at the end of the parking lot, there will be a vehicular gate. So security can sort of be modified and controlled at different parts of the park at different times. From this trailhead, you can head to the western part of the site along with a natural mulch trail, or you can continue east on a slightly more enhanced ADA trail. This ADA trail is a little too exuberant there. This ADA trail is designed similar to the other one, except it has single picnic table with a little shelter on top so that someone can be out and enjoying the natural resources of the park and be underneath a shelter, not worried about a little bit of rain. This trail is meant to be easier for trash to be picked up in case any users of the picnic tables leave any behind, which they shouldn't because they're using the park. And this trail, this ADA trail, much like the other ADA trail, it has its curves to minimize up and down grade along the trail and to accommodate the grading and have as minimal clearance as possible. You can see that there are natural mulch trails that are, or natural material trails that are going to be connecting it to connect to the rest of the park. So that is one difference between this trail and the last one. The internal access road will then continue down south. It is following as much as possible down here, these tower lines here. That is to minimize, again, clearing for this road as grading will need to accommodate it, but we are doing our best to minimize grading for the road. And then next we're going to go south of that, south where we were just looking at the internal access road, continues to follow the power lines. It separates to go to the parking lot here that will provide users access to a fishing platform that is parallel to the river lake so that it doesn't extend into it. And then there is also going to be a kayak.
Yeah, just pull it on that for a second. So you can see here, we are clearing from basically this area up to Dove's Lane, new clearing. From there, from this point, down to roughly that point there. Basically, as Zach mentioned, we're following that existing power line, so limiting the amount of tree clearing that's going on the east side of the park. And tying back to those goals of the park is preservation, stewardship. That allows us to get fairly close to the water with a limited amount of clearing.
And so looking here, these dash lines continue as like the existing trails here. They are divided a little bit and changed slightly so that as you know, this parking lot is built, this trail would not go through the parking lot. People can be on a natural trail outside of it. This parking lot here, which is what users are primarily going to be using for accessing this part of the site. You can see it's much smaller than the other ones. There is a loading and unloading zone that would be useful for people trying to access the fishing platform and the kayak launches. That's purely for non-motorized vehicles. And so there will be a gathering pavilion where people can put stuff, a bench, a trailhead, restroom, and more interpretive signage so that people can like learn about the site.
You guys are claiming it's purely for non-motorized boats. But a modern fishing kayak with electric motors is easy to carry as a regular kayak. So what's going to stop people from putting those in?
But I mean, we'll have the park rangers monitoring the site. That's one way to do it. Maybe others. Come up with a full list of ways to prevent that.
Okay.
Signage.
Is that something we can think of, maybe other than signage? Because that changes things quite dramatically as far as how it impacts the lake and the boat traffic on the lake.
Sure.
So. We found last week that you weren't going to put a bathroom down with water.
Well, one of some of the feedback we got was to move that parking lot up the hill. We haven't made that change yet, but we're definitely considering it. I think that was a good comment from the committee.
Bathroom's not on this new map that you gave us.
Yeah, it's hard for us because this one doesn't have all the different.
It doesn't have all the
It's the
detail.
overall.
Yeah, so that right now, the slide you see shows a bathroom.
Is it like another slide that has more stuff that we're not seeing?
No.
Again, everybody, please be respectful. We're trying to do our best in presenting the information to you. The meeting in November was to discuss with the homeowners associations. This one is essentially the same meeting. We've done what we can with the comments that we got back, but this is the larger public meeting that we want additional input that we will take into consideration into the 35% design. So we hear you. We want your honest feedback so that we can try to respond to it as best that we can.
Has there been any consideration, or is there a possibility that some of this construction will be consolidated? Instead of having 3 areas, have 2, for example, or something like that. What I'm getting at is, this is the plan, but this plan can be changed based on conditions and our feedback. Is that correct?
Yeah, like I said, we've heard about the floodplain issue, so we're gonna evaluate that as far as bathrooms and parking, whether it may make sense to have a drop off and have parking a little further away. And then when we get to the 35% design, we'll be doing the budgeting, which will identify the phasing of it. So yes, there are changes that can still take place. I mean, that's.
Because there's already some existing infrastructure there that can be expanded.
Right, and
Cheaper and without building new infrastructure for the residents, is my point. I mean, you can bring roads down from the other. I'm simply saying that without infrastructure, without the proper infrastructure on Dove's Lane, none of this is going to work.
well, and I'm
Go ahead.
sorry, I may. So and again, understand that, and we won't be able to build anything on the east side without improvements to Dustin. We acknowledge that.
Okay, good.
And that reminded me, for those of you that don't know, when the board adopted the park master plan with the resolution, and there were the directives about Sinclair Mill, one of the resolves in the resolution was, be it further resolved that the Department of Parks, Recreation and Tourism, now Department of Parks and Recreation, shall make improvements to the gravel portion of Dove's Lane prior to providing public access to the east side of Dove's Landing Park and engage Bradley Forest neighborhood residents in the design process. So that is what we're trying to follow through with. We know we cannot provide public access to that side of the park without doing something to Dove's Lane. So that's why we're going through the step of trying to do the best traffic analysis that we can based on what was done in the master plan, which was approximately 50 parking spots, which is currently, what we're trying to plan for. That can change. We're just trying to go through the process after the master plan.
The thing that we're struggling, some of us are struggling with, is that you printed this stuff out and said, look at this, and we're looking at it, and it doesn't look like what you're showing us there. Kevin said, the Dove's Lane suitability study has been conducted, and it's fine. Doesn't see a need for improvements. I just heard you say, we're gonna improve the road. So it's difficult to sit here and make sense of what's going on when we're hearing different things, seeing.
You gotta remember, this is only the 10% portion of the design. One of the reasons we're having this meeting is to get feedback, which we're hearing, and we're gonna go ahead and make some changes to, it's an improvement, to the plan based on the community's feedback today. As Patty indicated, part of that, future assessment is improvements on Dove's Lane to access the eastern portion of the park.
And
We don't have a solution today for that. What we've heard you, and we're gonna move forward looking at that.
Why wasn't the community feedback considered in November?
Essentially saying was that the capacity of the trips is within kind of, again, he started off by saying we don't have a full, correct me if I'm wrong. The traffic analysis for a gravel road is very difficult to begin with the numbers for the park, and that we're trying to get a handle of that, but the parts that are of the concern are in the design and where it narrows. And so currently the park capacity within the capacity of the road.
Ma'am?
But there are safety issues that will need to be addressed.
I have a question.
May not necessarily come out in a trip generation study.
The online questions just for a minute, we can get a couple in, but sorry, it's hard to do the online and the in person, so we just need to kind of do one at a time.
Okay, sorry about that. So
Yeah, so
just repeat the question, or did they?
I would like to know why the community feedback from the meeting in November has not been considered in these plans. You've said straight off the bat that these slides have not changed and community feedback is being considered, but I don't see any community feedback being considered in what you're showing us today.
It's because the November meeting was to have a conversation with the neighbors, but this meeting is our first full public meeting. So we can't make any changes to the design until, since it's in the public park, we can't make those changes until we get the whole public feedback. It doesn't mean that we haven't taken it in and are starting to think about that for design changes, but we can't do a partial design change without that, this full public meeting. Make sense?
Yeah, just if I can.
repeat if you don't
Yeah, if I can.
summarize the question.
If I can clarify for those in the room and the person online. The person online is asking kind of the similar question we started off with is where you're repeating, you guys are coming back and telling us the same thing. So why haven't we made changes? Again, just to clarify for those online, we had a meeting back in November with the 3 HOAs or residents communities that generally surround the park to get their initial input. This is now the public meeting that we invited the whole larger public to. So we didn't do a whole lot of changes. We did some of the traffic count updates, but we're again, taking all of this feedback into consideration for the 35% design development. So if it doesn't seem like we did anything since November, it's because we purposely wanted to present the same information to the public so that we're not kind of getting all of these things out of being inconsistent. I hope that helped address the online question.
So change the topic a little bit, going back to these kayak launches that you guys are talking about putting in, what sort of traffic study has been done as far as what this is going to do to congestion on the lake? You go out there on 4th of July, it's pretty crowded. You then take 50 kayaks, you get people who've never been on this lake before, have absolutely no idea what the etiquette is there, and you send them down to where we live and we play. And then all of a sudden things get dangerous, and then people start making claims that this lake is too dangerous for what we're doing, and it's all because you guys now stuck 50 new kayaks in the middle. So what's been looked at as far as what that's going to do to what already exists downstream?
Yeah, I mean, again, there's,
It hasn't been looked at.
Yeah, that's right. That's good.
Just
Right.
say nothing.
well,
So
yeah,
that's-
that, I mean,
That's fine, I just want to bring that up as a point that you guys really should take into consideration when you're thinking about doing something that has this big of an impact on our community. We don't want that. We don't want that. You're taking away a part of the lake from us by
The
putting
master
that in.
plan calls for us to
I don't see
consider
no
no
way.
waste, and that's exactly what we're doing. And once we have more information about the outcome of those discussions, we'll share that with you, but that is one sure way to help control for safety on that lake.
Kayaks don't stay in their wakes. They go
We'll
wherever
get
they
back to you
want.
about that, but that's something that we communicate during the master plan process and continue to support that conversation.
Is there no waste zone on the planet?
Or the master plan, probably the master plan for secure no waste zone. And
Yeah,
like,
everyone-
this is only 10% design.
5 times. Go ahead.
Charlie, do you have a question?
Since this is a meeting for the general public, I would like to express my support for making the public lake available for public use. I recognize that it's been available for the neighbors to take advantage of. We spent $1 million to repair the dam. It's public water. It's an opportunity for the general public to get access to public water, which is the number 2 need identified in the recreational need assessment back in 2019. Well, I'm happy to see you develop a non-motorized kayak boat launch access. I'm pleased to see what you're proposing and what you're presenting here tonight. It is an opportunity for us to not have the houses that could have been at Dove's Landing with all the associated traffic, but instead to have the appropriate level of development restricted by the conservation easement. So just to go on record for this part of the public meeting, I want to communicate this for what you've been presenting at the 10% design level. And I look forward to seeing it evolve in response to the feedback.
Thank you, Charlie. And also just in addition to this, again, as Charlie mentioned, our needs assessment survey showed trails are number 1 thing that the community wants. Buried in there, I'm not sure exactly where it ranked, was additional access to the waterways of Prince William County. So was it number 2? And so, so that is part of what drives our these surveys are what drives our master planning studies. So, so coming up this year, we are also undertaking an update to our countywide trails master plan, which is now going to include a Blue Ways component. So Blue Ways trails are essentially, looking at paddleable routes from put in to takeout or down and back directional. So we are looking at where can we accommodate more of those on the county waterways to potentially have a destination for if these launches go in, where are people likely going to paddle? Would it be best to make a route that goes upstream to Brentsville Courthouse? We have some land there that we might be able to put in a takeout, so that we're encouraging the public to paddle between those public destinations versus going downstream and paddling back up. So those are additional analysis that we will be undertaking to look at these issues and where people want to paddle.
Doesn't
And
Prince
then how
William
we
County
address that as
have
part of the
access to
So-
water in Woodbridge? There's a public access to water in Woodbridge right now that is not even utilized in Prince William County. Can you tell me some more about that, please?
Question, but if you could type it instead, because we have limited audio in the room. I think you said that, doesn't Prince William County residents have access to water in Woodbridge?
Yeah, we operate Lake Ridge Park and Marina, or Lake Ridge Golf Course and Marina in Woodbridge. There's a public boat launch there. That's to
How many
do the,
people utilize
access to
that?
the Occoquan, not the Upper Occoquan.
How many people utilize that? I'm curious.
already that's cleared on Lake Manassas?
On Lake Manassas. We do not own anything on Lake Manassas. We previously operated through a lease agreement many years ago, a launch facility, but we do not currently own anything. And I believe the city has passed an ordinance that the lake is shut down to boating.
How many
They
people
do not allow
utilize
public
the
access to the water
Woodbridge?
currently.
How many people
We
utilize
have
the
Rollins
access
Ford
to,
Park, which is nearby, but not on the lake.
ma'am? How many people
Sorry, let's
utilize the
continue on.
water in Woodbridge to justify this expense?
That will be online. Will it have this map? This presentation will be up there, so it'll be the combination of what we're seeing on the table.
Yes, we will post the recording of the presentation as well as the slide deck that Zach is showing you. That will all be on the webpage.
Yeah, so this parking lot will have an loading unloading zone, 3 parking spots specifically for a vehicle with a trailer for their kayaks. There will then be an ADA trail that connects to a boardwalk, and the natural trails further down closer to the Octagon. This ADA path here goes directly to the non-motorized kayak launch, and then a fishing platform. Will be sufficient space between them so that there is less or no conflict. There will be a bench or two, some interpretive signage just for information on everything, for education, and then a single picnic table with a shelter so that users can access that and perhaps like rest after kayaking and, before they go back up, take their back up. The boardwalk will go through the marsh area here and is meant to preserve the existing wetland area so that people aren't creating more muddy trails here. It's meant to concentrate this area and to provide, when this entire area is not flooded, access. And the same way that this area here, this fishing platform and the kayak launch are meant to prevent erosion along the bank so that it concentrates users into one spot. And then the boardwalk, you can see, connects to an existing trail that's, that is on this side, while having only one bench here on the boardwalk. Then we're going to head to Sinclair Mill over here on the eastern side of the site. But first, just to talk a little bit about the Sinclair Mill history, because as it was duly pointed out, there are some cultural parts in this park. There is a old mill over here, and there is a mill race over here. And we're doing our best to, or rather, we are minimizing any sort of construction on any of these parts, and we are trying our best to preserve them where feasible and provide interpretive signage. Of note, we are not planning on doing anything on this hill, so this area will be preserved.
And I think there's more information on the cultural resources report that's on the website. It has it talks a little bit more about all these historic features. It's hard to see the graphics there, but the number on the left here, they correspond to some of the yellow numbering on the right there.
Yeah, and this right here, this is the Sinclair Mill Road, and then this is the current driveway that goes into the site, and this here being Lake. And this here is Long Branch.
Go to the next slide.
All right, and then here in black and white, the same area, this here is the property edge. This here is existing or proposed trail on Long Branch. The green is going to be the natural trails near the parking lot, and this is the proposed bridge in the future for when funding clears up and it's available. I'm just going to zoom here on the parking lot. We have here another loading or unloading spot, two vehicle parking for trailer for the kayak launches, a pavilion. There's going to be ADA parking. There's a spot to put your bike for bikers. Trailheads for if you're to head west to Dove's Landing or if you're going to head east, so that people have access. There will be no general access into the Sinclair Mill Historic Site, but there will be interpretive signage here, and then for the Levine Cabin Foundation, where there will be a natural trail to a fishing platform that will be parallel to the riverbank, but not meant to extend into the actual waterway. This site, currently exploring the optimal kayak launches. One here next to the Sinclair Mill site, and then trying to figure out if the Long Branch is actually better in that this is that this is a calmer waterway. It might be easier access, but this is closer to the parking lot.
And all those historical features that you saw in the previous slide, there, majority of them are right in this area here. So trails run around them, and got kind of like one little crossing area in there to get over the Long Branch.
You mentioned the. And on the other section, is that going to also be parallel?
Yes. Yeah, we're not trying to go into it and
Yeah, you're not coming out into the water, you're coming along the water.
Yeah, and actually maybe end up being on the actual bank too. We have a couple of illustrative slides that show some examples.
Which again, the county, when I wanted to make my dock build bigger, told me that I think it's 6 foot by 10 foot platform is more than big enough, it's bigger than they would allow me to put in the RDA. Yeah, you guys are gonna be able to build something that's basically efficient. Yeah.
And then now that we've looked at these areas, we're going to briefly look at the river trail area on the southwest side of Dove's Landing Park. Here, effectively, you can see this pink convention line here. This is the edge of Dove's Landing Park land, and then on the other side is Lake Jackson HOA land. So as you can see, the trail is directly on that current land. So there needs to be an exploration between these parties of whether this, how this trail could continue to exist, if people wanted to continue to exist, and should there be a parallel trail that is north. One, if this trail is ultimately chosen to not continue, not proceed, even if it does get chosen to remain, there might be need for a northern trail in case this area is flooded, so that if a user sees like, oh, this is like, there's too much mud here, they'll have a less muddy trail to be able to use instead of having to just go back and retreat.
Is there a plan to keep people off of their property? Of the Lake Jackson Community's property there?
If the design moves forward that this is to not remain, then that would be accounted for in further designs. Yeah, we would look into how to keep people off Lake Jackson.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. We know that that's Lake Jackson property, and we've been talking with Katie. And we want to work, see if there's not an agreement available, but regardless of whether we can work out some type of agreement to continue to utilize that route, we acknowledge that an additional parallel trail is likely going to best serve all users in that area for the times that the water, especially during the times that the water stays on that trail.
That's the park trail now, that is on Lake Jackson's
Yeah.
property.
Yes.
Yeah, it's actually, yeah.
We've tried to put up signs that alert that it's private property and they get taken down.
So how's it gonna change with the new plan?
So, well, and that's where we want.
That's a huge liability on us.
Very much so.
Right, and that's where we want to have that conversation and work out the resolution to that. So, and what we can do, because obviously, when you try to close, we have to find a way that if it's not desired to remain, then how do we close it and make sure that the people stay off of there and patrol it? If we are going to do it, what type of agreement is appropriate to address that? So we acknowledge that is definitely an item that's going to be addressed. with
Barbed
this
wire
plan.
and banjos.
So,
The flag that's at the very corner, what is that?
Oh, interpretive signage. Yeah. So the plans in front of you are overall plans. They don't have some of like in the other ones where there's a bunch of like small signs on the parking lots. Those were included in a way to not obfuscate some of the line work. So there is the line work for the parking lot. Apologize for the confusion on that.
Yeah, so that signage there could be an interpretive sign that talks about the two streams coming together to create the Occoquan River,
So it's
as an example.
educational.
Yeah.
So
Educational. Sure.
Yeah. Oh,
bench?
yeah, there's a exploration of the bench there. Mhm.
Yeah, we also, something that doesn't really come out in these drawings when we're talking about specific areas is other overall improvements that we want to look at making in the park, obviously, for sustainability. The trails are in bad shape in many areas, so we want to look at how to improve those and make them more sustainable, address the multi-use so that we can maybe properly have an equestrian route, a hiking route, address design issues where they may overlap. We want to look at, it was also discussed in the master plan, is looking at offering obviously more seating along some of the longer routes. And then also whether we add passive play elements for the kids visiting the site. At the master plan meeting, we had talked about just some very natural elements, whether you have a seek and find activity or balance beam or anything built from fallen trees in the park and that kind of thing. So those are all like detail levels that don't really show up at this stage in the design, but it's something we want to consider as we move forward.
In the walk. I don't know the trails like a lot of others, my friends and stuff. So I just moved in July. So when the leaves fell, I wasn't quite sure if I was still on a trail. Is that some of the things that you're addressing?
Yeah, that we obviously want to, part of any plan for developing any park or adding new facilities is the maintenance and management budget. So that's something we also have to take into consideration in the phasing of it. We've just until recently been significantly down on our trail maintenance staff. We were living with a crew of 2. We're now up to a crew of 5. So we're working at building that workforce. And then we also have a bunch of trail volunteer groups that assist with trail stewardship in the county. So we're, again, going to actively work on trying to improve the status of the existing trail.
Surely, all these ADA trails talked about it, length last week. Some sort of aggregate put on top to make it the trail or maybe get access to it. Should be able to see whatever they put down on the asphalt or aggregate.
I it's good because I think that's where the trail was, right?
I remember the band basketball. I think it's a subset.
And I think one of the things that we've been talking about is, the trailhead improvements, maybe a QR code is there, you can scan with your phone and it brings up a map. I know this map is available on Prince William County's website. I pulled it up, which actually you can then use it for walking trails and parks. I think it's actually posted right by the entrance of Western Park.
Some of the signs you put it out. Like, basically, going, it looks like, well, you go straight ahead, but that's not really. Nice friends, so they represent more from, right?
Yeah, thank you for that. We're definitely we know that's an issue in several of our parks. And so as part of the trail improvements, more signage throughout is going to definitely be part of that plan. Kurt, there's a lot of intersections where you don't know. We feel you, park staff has even gotten disoriented out there a few times, so we understand that and we look to address that.
And so next, we just kind of want to look at some like examples of like what the boardwalk could look like based on like how the design proceeds. We have some examples. Like this here is like the NAPSCO nearby. Here, just a silent imagery. And then separately, some boardwalks from the Rockefeller Preserve. That's just different examples of like what this could be.
And then, so the elevated boardwalk allows you to walk on it whenever the ground's muddy and the water's risen, but also allows that natural wetland to maintain itself underneath that boardwalk. The water is going to rise, it's going to get limbs and things on it and it'll need to be maintained. But it's kind of ties back to that sustainability goal while also providing ADA access throughout the park.
that be the Prince William Parks that's gonna maintain?
Yes. And so just some example kayak launches, like here we're looking for an ADA kayak launch, especially right now in Dove's Landing, because the ADA trail connects to that. Other examples of kayak launches, we have here one in the town of Occoquan, Virginia. And then there's some more natural ones that you'll see where there's the possibility for like to grow in between it. So this protects the bank, minimizes erosion, and allows users to access the water without causing damage to any other banks. So how we were talking about fishing platforms earlier, just an example of one that could basically be cantilevered to like right to the body of water so fishermen can access it. But you're not like really going into the river, you're minimizing any difficulty for anyone using the actual water. And then to your point, like here, for example, we have an example of like what could be like walking down to a platform that could be hosting the kayak launch, or if the platform ends up being like right here, like this would float with the water. And so this is just an example of one of those systems. And then just looking at parks that exist in floodplains, a really famous one is Buffalo Bayou in Houston, Texas, and how those areas, those like bridges and such are meant to like be within the flood zone, and they do have to take off the debris, but the structures do not get damaged. And another example in Smith Park, Cincinnati, where they were specifically looking at, we have this whole park here, this is going to get flooded, and they're planning like where these elements are.
Yeah, and I mean, vast majority of this park is up out of the floodplain, but we do understand parts of it are along the water, or intentionally taking people down to the water, boardwalk, kayak, things like that. But we just wanted to show some examples of there are parks that are specifically designed within floodplains, and they're completely in floodplains, and they do need maintenance, but it's not an uncommon thing, and it gets people to the water.
No, the county just stopped doing all the log removal. 2 years ago, but they didn't pay for it.
Yes, I can't speak to that.
Yeah, that, again, well, that would probably be Public Works. So again, we would take any, as parks, we have a separate operating budget, so we would take that into consideration as part of the cost phasing and all of this to develop these items.
On that topic, has there been any conversation between Public Works and Parks about the dam turning into a spillway and all the work that they're planning to do in the next couple of years as well?
Not directly related to this this project, it's just in other, other, as far as other county agency discussions, but not as part of.
But not part of.
And then talking about like the larger, like, so this is what a gathering pavilion could look like that we've been talking about at the parking lots. And then when it comes to like the small picnic table shelters, this is something that they could look like, or effectively it is just a small roof on top of a single picnic table. This is what the bathrooms can be. Additionally, this would be an ADA picnic table. Not all the picnic tables will necessarily be like this. We are like public access, but as the design evolves, so will.
Zach, real quick, go back. So there's no public water or sewer in the park. So these are essentially, Patty, you might know more about that than I do. They're kind of waterless toilets.
Fancy porta potties.
Yeah.
Fancy porta potties. I think everybody knows what that means. So, I'm sorry, what?
They'll be pumped out then?
Yeah.
For it to flood, just float downstream, so it's hard to flood.
Not a big beach, bro.
Yeah.
So
What's the bath and floodplain?
yeah, so we are in this next phase, when we get to the 35%, we're gonna take another look at that. Get that lower kayak parking lot that we talked about earlier. We might move that up. The one at Sinclair Mill, I think we might move that up out of the flood area, just to try to prevent any.
And, even if the parking lot might stay a little bit further down, we talked about moving the restroom up the hill specifically, because, we could easily provide an access route to them.
But if you put it far enough away, people just be in the woods.
Yeah, it's kind of a catch, yeah, so we gotta balance a lot of different things.
And then just briefly touching on like the access road and the natural trails, like these are meant to go through a park. So these are not meant to be wide, large, super wide roads. They are meant to provide access for two vehicles that pass each other, but they're in a wood setting with vehicle gates that probably aren't motorized. And then the natural trail and ADA trail, they allow you to go on them, but they're not there to destroy the park. They're there to be within the park.
Okay, so next steps. So we're going to continue to solicit feedback. I know there's a lot of notes taken based on the November meeting. We're going to have a bunch more notes taken from this meeting. We'll meet with the park staff, try to incorporate as many comments and suggestions and edits as possible. And then we'll move forward with maybe updating the plan set and preparing kind of a 35% design. Then we'll have another public meeting to show you what changes we made and where we are as we move a little bit further in the design. So we'll have another meeting. I think we're scheduled for April 9th, 10th, something along that. 10th, we're early to mid-April. Make sure we'll be April 15th so you can get their text. Okay, and then as I mentioned earlier, once we get the 35% design, we'll show it to the public. We'll then prepare some cost estimates and then submit all that to the county, and they can make a decision on how they're going to move forward, what they're going to focus on primarily. Obviously, Sinclair Mill will be first, followed by some other additional improvements, the main portion of Kelsey.
Could we go back to the Sinclair Mill slide, please?
Yes, of course. So last thing, actually, real quick, last thing. So there's, you can send your comments to doveslanding@princewilliamcounty.gov.org, and there's the link to the web. You might leave this up for a second. This is where you can go and look at the 2022 master plan. Yeah, take a picture. You can, instead of trying to write it down real quickly.
I have it in the email too.
There's the cultural resource reports up there. It is slightly redacted to discourage treasure hunters from going out and pilfering things from the cultural resources identified on the site, things like that. So
yeah, we'll be maintaining the website. Again, the recording of this meeting and the slide deck from this meeting will be posted on that webpage. We're taking feedback and comments through the email address. We will, if everybody makes sure you have your email contact here, we will be keeping you as updated as best we can as we move through this process and obviously get the notices out. We had some different, did everybody here receive we had sent out these little note cards?
Yeah.
Postcards, did everybody? We got a lot, our search engine, a lot of vacant properties, so we got a fair amount back. Some people may have gotten two, so even better, I guess. But we'll try to clean that system up and keep those notices going as well. We also put signs at the park to try to alert everybody of the meeting. So we'll continue to have those blasts as we move forward.
Thank you.
So, and thank you for taking the extra two to just again, outreach is the best thing, but it's also problematic trying to figure out which way everybody communicates with social media and everything. So again, we'll try to get those blasts out, but if we have your contact information, we can create a direct distribution line so that are updated.
Do we have any more online comments?
Yeah, is there anything, I was trying to monitor it. There was a lot of chat going on. I don't know if there's any specific questions, Erica?
I think so. I think there are specific questions.
Yeah, so just so everybody, if everybody online can hear me, we're gonna, the chat will be saved, and so we'll make sure that we follow up on any questions that we may have missed during the meeting, and we'll follow up with those responses, so. Back to Sue.
Wondering if there's gonna be any signage that will show where the park ends, our little purple line, where the private property begins. If we can make sure that we get that into the programming of.
Up here?
On the water.
Oh, right here? Oh, right there. Yeah, that was one of the comments from last time.
Yeah.
Putting
Since it's
private
public
property.
meeting now, I'm sure it's on record.
Right, yeah, we could definitely look into,
Making sure people know
Yeah.
you're leaving park property, you're going on the private property. Do not leave your kayak
right.
because it's private and people will be not so nice.
Yeah, I think one of the comments about making a waterways map and posting it by the kayak launches, which hopefully people can take pictures of it.
Stay over here, yeah. And straight away.
You would think it would be pretty easy to not get lost, but
Will find us.
yeah, exactly.
Again, we appreciate everybody coming out tonight. We do hear you. We want to get the feedback. We apologize if you feel like you've had to say it more than once. But we want to make sure we're giving as many people as we can the opportunity to provide that feedback. So we want to be here to take it and listen. Again, if you have any comments that you want to just write on the sticky notes and leave on the maps, we'll collect those at the end of the meeting. If there's Beth, are there any other administrative items that you feel weren't addressed?
No, thank you all for coming out. We appreciate it.
Does anybody else have any, I don't want to shut it down yet, we've got 5 minutes, so, does anybody have any additional questions? Yes.
So again, we spent about 10 years dealing with proposals for housing developments, other types of public facilities. Lord only knows we're going to have hospitals and bus parking lots. This Dove's Landing properties. Also, yeah, and so after 10 years of effort, it finally ended up as a park. Now we're going to the next stage of making a park. And it is not going to be a lot of things it could have been. It's also not going to be locked up in the wilderness area. It's going to get developed enough to justify the county's investment in what we've done at Lake Jackson and what we've done to make this a park. There are a lot of things that we can do to make this a good park. Meetings like this are great ways to gather the ideas to make that happen. But I think we should all be happy if this is going to end up as a low-density, natural, passive, recreational park. It's going to have public use, but it's going to have the appropriate level of public use in its location. And it's going to be, I think, while we have concerns and issues with how it might be developed, I think we should remember the context of what it could have been versus what it's going to be.
Charlie, I don't disagree with it. I think that, speaking for myself only, I'm very happy with this park. I want to focus the activity in the park on the developed hard surface roads that exist currently, the parking lot that exists currently. I don't understand why there's such a push to send people down to the east side of the park and the whole west side parking lot that exists.
And
if you did that, you could maintain a kayak launch on this side, put another one on the east side, and concentrate the kayak traffic on this part of the lake to try to prevent people from going downstream where there is no public takeout and the dangers exist. And if this is the first time I heard somebody talk about trying to encourage people to kayak from the courthouse down here, I think that's a great idea. Try to figure out how to keep the kayaks onward to the east, north end of the lake. That will be safer.
And then just to clarify the property boundary, I know at the very end of the HOA meeting in November, it was talked about why we didn't look at more access on that kind of eastern side as far as water access. And that's as a result of the Lake Jackson ownership in that area. They own that whole kind of eastern bend. So the current proposed kayak location is the first location where the park actually meets the water. So that was the general impetus of where that location was.
It's like kind of the overall slump.
It's purple line here shows the park boundary.
Yeah, yeah. What Patty's talking about, it's Lake Jackson, kind of the purple line here. They own the whole strip of land down, all the way down to here. Is that right?
Yeah,
Patty?
yeah.
Yeah, so there's no access to the river all along the western and southern portions of the site until you get to that location.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that's great.
I
I forgot about that.
It's give me in November too, so. Anyway, yeah,
The point about the east and west place, parking lots, can you explain what the consideration was for not simply expanding west parking?
again, it was in the through the master plan process, it was looking at, again, the kayak, potential for the kayak launch, which was number 2 in the needs assessment survey. Trails being number 1, so the expansion of the trails on the western side of the park, because that was not part of the park when we did the previous master plan. So those trails are all social trails, so looking at how we can develop those. And then safety and security. So if we're potentially having a kayak launch and additional trails, then creating additional safety and security access to get in there. For the, we have, again, people getting lost. If there's any injuries, how do we get to them quicker? So, and then expanding the natural cultural resource programming that Parks does with our Science in the Parks programs. This park has many different, we talked about in the master plan process, many different unique forest categories. You've got a large beech hardwood, you've got some other type, I'm not a tree expert, but you've got a few different types of forest climate and different areas in the park that we also want to highlight from a nature resource and interpretive perspective. Yes.
Do you have any numbers on that needs assessment? How many community, like Prince William County residents were commented or responded?
I don't have those numbers at the top of my head, but we can put that in. That's part of our parks and recreation and open space master plan. We'll put a link to that on the Duff's Landing webpage that has that information in it, that talks about the needs assessment results.
Seems like putting the road on the utility, I think it makes sense too. It's part of the pathway. Putting it to the right part.
Well, and currently that easement, those of you who walk there know, the utility trucks really tear it up when they go in there to do any maintenance that they need to do. So it's also having that joint access that would allow them to access the lines as well as allow us to have better access on that side of the park. That's why we wanted to try to pull it.
So part of the reason why you're want to bring most of the traffic down Dove's Lane is because you don't have waterfront access up the lake.
Well, I mean, yes. So like I said, these are the considerations we took into because of where we didn't feel that. Right, but we didn't, none of this, out of this, again, that's, I think the current plan is 50 spaces on the east side of the park split between 2 parking lots. And so we felt that those parking areas were the appropriate size to serve what we were proposing on that side of the park. We then felt the existing parking lot was appropriate to serve the west side of the park and the existing trails on that side, given that we aren't proposing a whole lot of new development side.
As the gentleman from Newberry said, that the east and the south is going to be used significantly more.
We don't know. I mean, you don't know until you build it. And so we are.
We were following the 2022 master plan.
Right.
That's what, our direction was to take that master plan and expand on it.
Your opinion said it would be used. Okay.
Yeah, the other thing to look at, you got the water access. But we can use Dove's Lane. We may need to make some improvements to it, but it is existing infrastructure. It would be minimal impact to vegetation, trees, things like that, to make improvements to it.
Than the trees, in my opinion, but that's just me. Your children, in my opinion.
And that's
I
where,
don't care less about a tree.
if we can
As
get
opposed to
the,
a kid walking down the roads.
and if we can get the bus to come down the road, use the cul-de-sac that we would put in, that would greatly ease those concerns. And then we would only need to do, I would say, relatively short sections of new roads, clearing to gain access all the way down to the water versus if you did come in from here, you'd have to drag a road all the way through that area. That's
Yeah.
pretty significant impact.
So honestly, the little straight stretch that you're using the utility for, that whole parking lot, everything past that dotted line on that box, that's all old growth forest. I mean, you're talking about not even half of that road that you're directing all that because you're not trying to clear trees. But it's tiny. It's actually a very small spot now that I'm looking at it.
Those trees were up in the 1970s.
After agri.
All farmland and capitalism.
So again, those are, that's the continued analysis. We'll go when we get into the more the, you know, Newberry has taken the master plan. Going to continue to fine tune this, locate things, looking at all of those factors to arrive at the 35% design. And we'll bring those back to you later in the spring.
One last question. Can you quantify how much land is actually by Lake Jackson? You've got 300 acres here that we're talking about. How much is the waterfront?
I don't know. Do you know, Kitty?
Is that separate little parcel?
It's a
Whatever.
strip, it's a strip of land that, yeah, I'd totally throw out a number of about 110 acres, maybe.
That'd be my guess.
Yeah, it's very,
12-ish.
yeah, so about 12 acres along the water. And those lots, as everybody on the water knows, they generally go to the middle of the center of the waterway. So. Anything else, everybody? Really appreciate you coming out tonight with the weather. Please travel safe on the way home. And thank you for your input. Appreciate it. If you haven't signed in, again, make sure that you sign in and provide your email address. Thank you.